Jeff Kikel with us all the way from Austin, Texas. And for those who don't know Jeff has been for the past 25 years working with individuals on personal finance, working with business owners on business finance as well, wealth management and exit planning strategies. Jeff, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial background.
Thanks, Mac. I really appreciate the invite on the show. Love your show. Once again, these are my people. So I'm really excited to be on. So I've been in the wealth management business for about 28 years, I think officially this year. Started off, work in the corporate world, a bunch of different financial services firms over the years. And about 8 years ago, I wrote my first book, which was actually a retirement book for police officers. And really, it's the only book I'm aware of that's ever been written for police officers, besides one really awful one. And I was looking for a way to market it. And I decided, well, maybe I'll do a podcast. And then I realized, well, maybe I needed to actually listen to a podcast first. So I started listening to one podcast that got me thinking about why I should become an entrepreneur. And I ended up listening to that podcast. At the time, it had been like 3 or 4 years in. I listened to the first probably 2 years in a period of about 3 months. So I called it entrepreneurial brainwashing. And it caused me to quit my job, start a business, and then start another business right afterwards. So I had been in the financial services industry. I launched my first venture, successful venture, which was a co-working space, because there was no place like that to meet in the town where I was. So all of us that were meeting with clients were meeting at like local restaurants and wherever, coffee shops and things like that. Not the best thing for finance. Absolutely. And so I started a co-working space because I saw a need for that. And right after that, my firm said, well, you can't do that and work here. So I said, okay, fine, I'm quitting, and left, and have never looked back since. Over that last 8 years, I have built 6 businesses. Recently, in the last year, sold 2 of those for a 7-figure exit, and continue to run. I sold my interest in the financial practice I owned, and have launched a new practice based on my Freedom Day concept, which is something that over the last, let's say, 4 to 5 years, have really been developing that idea of saying I don't talk about retirement anymore. I talk about Freedom Day, that first day that you wake up and you didn't have to get up and go to work that day.
Yeah, my team is saying we've got to get Jeff on to talk about Freedom Day.
Nice.
So, so Jeff, tell us about Freedom Day. What's the concept of Freedom Day, and why did you? I know why you set it up, but what does it mean, and how can people start doing that for themselves? Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, Freedom Day, basically the reason Freedom Day came about, I've been doing retirement and financial planning for 25 years. And what I started to see, it was really interesting, about 2000 and let's say 13, 14. So you had really a big split that I saw from customers and clients that I was working with. The people that were older, they had been through the 2000 to 2003 crash in the markets. So that was a major impact for them. Then they got 2008 to 2010. So for most of them, they were really crushed as far as finances went. And for a lot of them, it was this kind of fatalism. Well, I'm going to end up working forever. They didn't do a really good job of saving to begin with, and they were already behind the 8 ball. And so a lot of them just had this fatalism of, well, I'm just never going to be able to retire. I'm just going to work forever. The other shift was the younger people. So let's call millennials and Gen Z. They are just wired different from the rest of people, from the rest of the world. They're wired to say, hey, I want to live for today. I want to go travel. I want to go do the things I want to do. And retirement is just something that happens 40 years down the road, and I don't want to worry about that. So, when you're a retirement planner and you've got 2 groups of people that really don't give a crap about what you do, I started to look at it from a different point of view, because both groups felt like retirement was something that was just not attainable. And I started to talk with, and it came out of one client meeting. I was sitting down with a client, got up this morning, and you didn't actually have to go to work today. You have enough income and you both have enough income and assets that you're never going to have to work another day in your life. And I saw this big smile come on his face, and I hadn't seen that smile in a lot of people in a long time. And so I started to share that whole Freedom Day concept. And the difference between retirement and Freedom Day is something that, one, seems attainable for most people, and
Right.
two, it seems like you have control over it. So those two very things help people get to that point. So it's not just this thing that's out there and this amount of money, it's controlling your cash flow, and that allows you to reach your Freedom Day as fast as you possibly can.
And certainly you are the expert in that arena. So are there some clear steps one can take in order to reach Freedom Day and celebrate and either stay with their job or quit the job if they so choose?
So I get up every morning because I want to. I work because I want to, not because I have to.
Yeah.
And I defined it as 5 pillars of Freedom Day. So there's 5 pillars. The first is you got to figure out where the hell you're at right now. I mean, the problem is most people don't really watch their budget very carefully. And I'm not talking about sitting there and, counting off everything that you do. It's understanding what's coming in, what's going out, and then do you have positive cash flow every month? So that's the first step, is we get them to sit down and we get them to go through a budget and be honest of what you spend. And we'll have them track that for at least a month so that we know exactly where we're at. So now we know, okay, this is where we're at. And from that budget, we can identify this is what it takes to run the house on a monthly basis, kind of the basics, not the big fancy vacations and all that, but this is what it takes to run the house. Wherever there are financial planners, we are trained to help people acquire, money and assets and amass assets. And we see that from this number of assets, not from what the cash flow is that those assets develop. So most of the training in our industry was developed by insurance companies, mutual fund companies, brokerage firms, who their sole and only job in life is to acquire more and more assets from clients. So needless to say, that's the way they design the system. Well, that's the way they pay most of us in the industry and everything else. So what do you think? That's what we do. Hey, you've got to amass, $1.2, $1.8 million in your life. Well, you don't necessarily have to. And we reward ourselves as we acquire assets and create cash flow. We reward ourselves. So we're doing that all along. And I'll tell you a story of how I did this in my own world. Step 3, or the pillar 3, is we have them create what I call freedom engine. Whether it's a little side hustle, whether it's creating a product that they can sell on the internet, something. Typically, these are active participations, meaning they're active sources of income. I have to do it to do it. But what I want to get them thinking about is start thinking about not, I want to do this and I don't have the money to do it. Start thinking about, I want to do this and where am I going to find the money to do it? And I start thinking differently. I start thinking like a business owner does, which is, how do I create a new product or a service or whatever that's going to generate an income source or cash flow that I can use? And I initially am using that to do fun stuff as I'm going. It doesn't affect the rest of my budget. I still am earning an income from my job. This is just extra money that I'm using to either reduce debt or I'm using to use for my bucket list. Once I've done that bucket list item, well, that money is still there, hopefully, and it's revenue that's coming in. Once I start to reduce my debt and I reach the point where, I've got control and I'm thinking about this, I've created that Freedom Day, or I've created that freedom engine. we start to take the money coming in from the Freedom Engine and start to buy assets that are generating a passive income stream and passive income can be buy a business, start a business, real estate, investments that generate cash flow. Whatever that is, it's passive income that's coming in and generating that.
And thanks for that, Jeff. How easy or how difficult do you find that people find to do, go forward towards Freedom Day?
I think the hardest part is retraining your brain to not think like an employee. Right. Retraining your brain to go, I don't have to wait to do this. I just need to figure out how to generate the income to do this. So that's that big change. And I mean, it's the hardest part of the whole. I just found that the people that resonated with my message, that they just didn't want that. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to live a really cool, amazing life. And it took me a good solid, 25 years to come up with the concept and do it in my own life. But what I'm trying to do is short circuit that process a little bit for people.
So thank you for that, Jeff. So can anyone become financially free and have Freedom Day?
I think anyone can. Now, will they? Not everybody will. Not everybody's willing to put in the effort that it requires. Everybody has time. I don't care who you are, you have time. Each of us has the same 161 hours per week that everybody else has. Right. And it's how you spend that. So let's assume that I work 50 hours a week. Okay. So now I'm down to 110 hours or 111 hours. Okay. Let's say I sleep for 50 hours. Okay. So 50 hours. Okay. So I've still got 10 to 15 hours that are left over that I could do, I could do something. So that means take an hour a day, assume you're going to spend time with your kids and all that, take an hour a day and focus on something. And one of the greatest, Earl Nightingale, one of the greatest speakers of all time, long gone. One of the things that he said was spend 1 hour per day focused on your chosen profession, and you will be the world's most recognized person. And let's say I don't want to give up that 10 hours with my kids. All right, fine. How can you go from working 50 hours a week down to 40? How can you be more efficient at your job? And believe me, I'm the worst at this, or I was the worst at this. I worked 70, 80-hour weeks, so I was filling up that time with a bunch of crap that I didn't need to be doing. And I started to delegate off, eliminate things, automate things to where I could reduce the amount of time that I was spending doing my job and more time focused on things that I wanted to do towards the future.
Well, yeah, it certainly takes discipline. What about couples? What about?
I feel like I'm a therapist half the time, but I mean, both people have to be on the same page. You may not be on the same journey together. And I think that can be a challenge if you're not on the same journey together. So what you really need to do is they really need to sit down and figure out what the next, what each of their goals are, what their focus is, what this means to them. One of the things that I do, that bucket list for me was the last thing that came into the Freedom Day world. But what I have people do today, and I even saw this in my own life, I have couples do their own individual bucket lists and then see the things. There are certain things that, that one person wants to do, the other one doesn't want to do, but you still need to support them. So let me give you a great example. So my wife is the most loving person I know, but also one of the most cynical people. But I gave her a bucket list and she went just through that thing, filled the whole thing out, which I've never seen her do anything like that. And she constantly is updating it. So I'll give you an example of what people have different things. We were over in England, I told you just about 6-8 weeks ago. And what we decided is, this is the first long vacation overseas that we've been on in about 7 years. We started businesses and we just didn't have the time. So we're over
Right.
there for 7 days, and we decided, what can we do on our bucket list? Well, let's do a bucket list stack. What can we do while we're there? Well, one of the things on my bucket list was I wanted to drive an Aston Martin, V12 Vantage out on the Silverstone Raceway. There's a
No.
company that does this. It's like 295 pounds, greatest deal on the planet. And I spent 4 hours. But it was my bucket list thing, and she did it. Well, on her bucket list, one of the things she wanted to do is she wanted to do a traditional English tea, the full on thing. So we went to Kensington Palace, which is like one of the coolest places to do this. And we did the tea. Well, she had a blast in the car. I had a blast doing the tea thing. I never thought I would, but it was fun. And it's just, it was like that. But it was one of those things that both of us, were supportive of each other. And that's why you want to do those things separately. Well, it's very much the same thing. What does Freedom Day mean to each of you? For somebody that, is like, hey, I'm in a super high stressful job. It might be, I just want out. I just want out of that job. I don't know what I'm doing. The other one might be more, hey, I want to do volunteer work or something along those lines. Well, you've got to figure out what each person is wired for, and then build a plan. If we want to travel, we travel. If we want to do whatever. If I decide I don't want to get up and go to work today, I don't get up and go to work today.
On that note there, Jeff, does one have to quit, Freedom Day? Does that mean you quit your job or you stop your business, or it just means that you've got the freedom to do the choice to do whatever you want to do?
You have choices. You're not getting up and going to work because you have to anymore. So what I always tell people, because I get that question all the time. Well, does that, because your book, so the upcoming book is called Freedom Day, Quit the Job You Hate, Live the Life You Love. Well, it's very much like the 4-hour work week. It's a title. Does that mean you have to quit your job? No. It does not mean you have to quit your job. Now, I don't really have to keep, working 70, 80-hour work weeks. It's a little bit more complicated with a business owner, because we have to figure out a way to extract ourselves from our business and still keep the business going. But if you are a crappy employee, or if you hate what you do, you are probably not going to be the best employee after you reach your Freedom Day. You're probably going to hate your job even more. And, you're going to know, I don't have to be here right now, and I want to quit. So you have the ability to do that. I identified 3 freedoms. So it's not just financial freedom. It's freedom of time, it's freedom of money, and it's freedom of kind of expectations, what's expected of you. Those 3 freedoms you need to have in your life to really, truly be free. The bucket list allows you to be intentional about what you're doing, but you don't have to quit your job if you don't want to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Jeff, for those who are listening and think this is wonderful, I want to learn more from this chap called Jeff. What's the best way for them to contact you or connect with you?
Easiest way. So I'm a big LinkedIn guy. So if you go search my name on LinkedIn, Jeff, Kikel, Jeff Kikel. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just connect with me and DM me directly. You can also reach me on Instagram at Jeff Kikel. And also the podcast I do, I share a lot of these concepts and things like that. It's www.freedomnationpodcast.com.
Awesome. So get hold of Jeff. Listen to what this man has to say. Go for your Freedom Day and learn to enjoy your life every single day. Jeff, I want to say thank you for coming on to the Business and Wealth Show with us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for adding so much value to us.
Folks, this is not, it's a hard job being a podcaster. Yes, sometimes we feel like, so sometimes we feel like we're just talking to nobody, and we know you're out there. So comment on this, share it with somebody that's important to you, and make sure wherever you're listening to it, if you have the opportunity to give Mac a good rating, give him a 5 stars, so that he can keep he knows that you're out there and you can share with him. So thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for adding so much value, and I'll catch up with you soon.
All right, Mac. Thank you, man.
You're most welcome.